back to Porsche Club Insider. I'm Vu Gwyn. I'm your host for today, and I'm here at the 5 North Main podcast studio in Bel Air, Maryland, with our normal cast of characters. This is our third podcast, and we have Manny, our technical director, Rob Sass, panorama editor, and Damon Lowney, digital media coordinator. Shout out to the coffee bar for the fresh coffee, and let's just kind of go into what the heck did you do last weekend? Any car stuff?
Well, just as you were reminding me, I got to meet Bel Air's finest on the way out from the podcast.
Last podcast. That's right.
Yes, I wasn't. I had Waze on, but I wasn't paying attention to it, and I wasn't even looking at the speed limit. And I got pulled over for doing 45 and a 30. And the officer, so I'm driving the Z3, which is kind of ratty, you know. It's my daily driver, 215,000 miles. So the cop leans in and says, do you own this car?
As in, I can't believe you're driving this car?
Are you driving your son's car? And I'm like, yeah, it's mine. And they're like, okay.
I thought they got you for not having a front plate. That's what my guess was. No. I didn't think you, like that little stretch, I didn't think you could even get to above the speed
Especially
limit.
with the 1.9 Z3.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought they pulled you over for
But once again, I think he felt sorry that, 55-year-old guy driving, trying to relive his youth in a convertible. And luckily, I got a warning.
Well, the thing is, the appropriate thing for us to do as we drove by and saw you pulled over is we took a photo and sent it to your wife immediately.
Because my wife texts me and says, speeding or light out. And I called her up and I said, how in the world did you just find out in like a minute? Because she works at the courthouse, and I thought for sure one of the cops swung by because the courthouse is only like a minute from where I got pulled over. But no, she said that your daughter sent a photo of me being pulled over. So,
how about you, Rob? Any car stuff this past weekend?
Just cleaned out my garage in preparation for the famous TVR
coming home.
Yeah.
So, is it being shipped home, or are you going to go fly and drive it back?
No, it's being shipped home. I don't have time. My travel.
You should just ship it directly to the next owner.
No, hey, it's a total keeper, Vu.
Yeah.
No, I like the car.
So what did you end up having done to it?
Fuel pump and fuel filters and fuel tank drained and cleaned out. Usual stuff.
Okay.
Usual stuff.
Usual stuff.
Usual stuff for any car that's been sitting for a while.
Okay. And it was sold to you as perfectly running good TVR.
Which it was.
Ready to go.
I don't feel like the car was misrepresented in any way. It's really nice, but cars sit, stuff gets sucked through the fuel system, and you got to deal with this. And plus, it's the first time I probably saw ethanol gas in its entire life, which probably didn't make it happy either.
How about you, Damon? Hey, you autocrossed this last weekend, right?
No autocross.
Oh, no autocross?
But I did drive a car that's not my Porsche that I'm pretty enthusiastic
Do
about.
not say your Camry.
It's the Camry.
Oh, my God.
No, I was going to say, you say Camry and you lose a body part.
Yeah, well, it is
all the credibility goes out the window. We have to get a new podcast guest now.
Well, it is a unicorn. It's a V6 manual Camry. So that's almost 200 horsepower, about 3,100 pounds.
So for those of you that have never seen this car, if you can think of a car that, remember the Charlie Brown character, Pigpen? If Pigpen was a car, that's your Camry.
I was thinking about any abandoned car in Detroit. This could be fill in as an extra.
It still has salt and brine from Chicago, where it lived most of its life.
Yeah, you haven't washed it since you got it. You got it from like a family member.
That is a nice bit of patina there, right? Is what we call
patina.
it.
Patina.
Right.
Patina.
Well, the one thing it doesn't have, though, is the typical Camry dent in the bumper. I mean, I walked around the back of it fully expecting to see that, and it does not have the pumpkin-sized divot in the corner of the bumper.
But there is something nice about driving a car that has quote unquote patina, and you don't stress driving that car, right? Like,
no,
you took care of it mechanically, you went through it mechanically, and if you get a ding, if you get a dent, if you take it down to Baltimore, if it's there when I get back, great. If not, that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't left me stranded since I brought it back from the dead, but
it's not. Oh, sorry.
Well, after I drove to Pennsylvania for a friend's wedding and back, I noticed that
you took that car to the wedding.
Yes, I did.
As you would.
Could have taken the Porsche, but
right.
why not take the Camry? But I got back and it has a coolant leak. it needs a new radiator and all the stuff that you do while you're in there. So more winter project for me.
So that was my weekend as well. I went to a wedding. Didn't really do any car stuff. It was a nice drive down to Northern Virginia, but we had a lot of car discussions because our minivan is getting over 200,000 miles, and we don't really need all the room. So next year the goal is to get the missus a new car, and now shopping for one and trying to find the right one is fun, but then also I find that it's kind of limiting because I have some certain parameters that this car has to be, and we're not finding a lot of options because everybody is selling freaking compact SUVs, and we don't want an SUV. We want like a hatchback, wagon, fun to drive, manual, decent gas mileage, and there's not a lot of cars left.
Mazda 3.
Yeah, so on the way up here, which was about an hour ride from the PCA offices, there was heavy traffic on the interstate, so we were examining every car that passed us.
Hey, you got here safe and sound, and we didn't get a ticket. Don't complain.
So the Mazda 3, I think, came out as a surprise winner of possible candidates.
Yeah, because I think the leading candidate over the weekend was like a GTI, the four-door GTI. And then we thought about like Lexus CT200.
Golf all track.
Well, if you're going towards wagons, you might check out a Buick Regal, which is pretty good-looking wagon, actually.
Did he come to the wrong podcast?
No, it's a really good-looking wagon.
Would that be a Regal? It's an Opal. They're nice.
Did he just say a Regal Regal?
Hey, I'm not great with pronunciation.
All right, Damon, I will say I do like that car.
Yeah.
I can't convince my wife that to like that car.
No, here's what you do: is you do what every other
because that's basically what we have now. We have a Chevy Cruze, right, for my daughter,
right,
and it's a nice car for the money.
Yeah, you just Opalize it. You take off the Buick badges and put the Opal badges on, and call it good.
Yeah. So, anyways, we also love the Macan, right? And I think a Macan is a great choice too. But we're kind of in our heads conflicted because we have a Cayenne, and we feel as though a Cayenne and a Macan are too close. Although I think they're different cars. I mean, towing capacity, size, fuel efficiency. I mean, our 06 Cayenne is a big thirsty V8, where these new Macans are super efficient. But my wife, before we had kids, we had a 3 Series Touring that she absolutely loved, and I sold it when I joined PCA on staff because I said I couldn't drive a BMW to work every day, and we bought a 996. We sold her.
What do you drive to work every day now?
Hush, Mr. Sass.
Sorry,
Mr. Sass.
Well, I had an E46 manual wagon when I first started.
It's a great car.
It was fantastic. I miss that car every day.
She even said, can I get my old car back? And for like a hot minute, I was like, I can, but you're talking about a 10-year-old car, and I want something that we can just get in, not think about it, drive 5 hours, something happens. She drives by herself long distances quite a bit, and I want a newish car.
Here's the scary thing. If you could find that hypothetical unicorn E46 wagon with under 50,000 miles on it and a manual transmission, I guarantee you would pay more for that car than you would for like a 2018 Golf all track with a manual. That's crazy.
They're in the high teens, right? High teens, but still not like I wouldn't be able to believe in it.
For
100%.
I guarantee you a 50,000 mile manual E46 wagon, particularly if it's rear wheel drive, that's now above $20,000.
Well, that's the thing is you can't find a rear wheel drive. They're all IXs,
right?
And I don't want an IX.
Right. Right, that is true. But even an XI is, with those miles and a manual is a $20,000 car, and that's kind of the price range of like a 2017 or 2018 Golf all track. So what do?
Well, you go to the Mart and look at Mart Fresh and see what other cars are out there. You like that transition?
That was a great segue.
So let's talk a little bit about Mart Fresh. For those of you that don't know, these are some picks that the staff here in PCA go through. Every 2 weeks, we go through the PCA Classifieds, which is called the Mart, and we pick our favorite cars. And we thought we'd talk about it today. This week's pick, I'll go first since I'm already chit-chatting. I picked that beautiful iris blue 996 that I think is probably, if you're going to buy a 996, especially a 2000 996, this is the way you should buy it because it seems like somebody has dumped some serious money into this car, and for whatever reason they want to let it go. And for 34 grand, I think it was. Whew, this car is beautiful.
And I thought you were going to change your pick, because I've actually corresponded with the owner. I'm actually kind of interested in the car. The only thing,
Mr. Sass,
that I can't quite figure out is
not every car that goes into the Mart has to go through your hands first.
That's not the way it works.
No, it does not work that way.
No, but it's an interesting car. It's a replacement engine, but it's an engine that was built by a shop in Colorado with a really good reputation. It's an 04 engine in a was it 2000?
2000, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, all the right parts and everything else. Trying to get a hold of the shop to ask a couple of questions, because it's got what he says is a 997 IMS bearing. It does not have like an LN replacement intermediate shaft bearing. So, you know, the question I would want answered is, is the car due for another bearing at this point?
But before we get into the details of the car, and this is a pet peeve of mine, and no disrespect to the seller, there are a couple of photos that give you a good idea of the condition of the car. The car is super clean, but they didn't take the time to give you more details on the car. Like, it's pretty limited information.
Right. I mean, you don't know if it's a respray or, I mean, it's a great color. It's
a great
iris
color.
Blue with, what is it, space gray?
Mm-hmm. It's got sport seats.
It's got sport seats.
It's got a carbon fiber 3-spoke wheel.
Yeah.
Something that I noticed.
It's got rocker sill
So why does it have rocker sills but doesn't have like a GT3 nose, right?
Right.
That's kind of interesting.
Or, rear spoiler. So it's like 1/3 of an aero kit.
Yeah, and it's got,
you sort of want to know what what
it's
happened
got
there.
turbo twist wheels that I don't think these are OEM wheels. They're kind of the turbo twist look. And then it also has the Carrera badge in the back deleted, which a lot of people do. But when you see that, you're like, was it deleted because they liked the look, or was it deleted because it resprayed?
I don't know. It was deleted because it's held on by double-sided tape, and after 17 years.
No, that's those.
My 964 has had it for 31 years.
Yeah,
right.
Those stay on unless you snag your microfiber cloth.
Hand-built 964.
They stay on unless you snag your microfiber cloth on like the A or the R or something like that. But usually they stay put.
Yeah. Well, I can't answer that, but it's a good looking car. The interesting thing is, at $34,000 with the engine work, I think the consensus was it's a car that's priced right. 2 years ago, what would you have I mean, what would your expectation be in terms of
That was a below $20,000 car back a few years ago.
With the engine
amazing
and everything?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think with the engine, 22, 23 might have been
okay.
Yeah,
20s.
might have been the asking
20s.
price 2 years ago. So it's amazing.
But I think at 34, it's
a
a smoking deal.
I do too, and I just think that's a sign of the times that we're in.
But you mentioned, or at least we saw in the description of that car, it mentioned a 997 IMS bearing,
and I'm not sure what they
sense.
mean. If it's an 04 engine, it would have had, let's face it, the worst version of the IMS bearing.
The small one.
Yeah,
but
single
replaceable.
row. What?
It's replaceable. You can.
But it is replaceable.
997 IMS bearing wouldn't fit into a 2004.
Correct. It'd be it would be the big single row.
Unless they're talking about like a early, 2005 bearing, which would be, in my mind, I think the same as an 04 bearing.
I think the owner was describing, like in my 996, I have a 997 clutch kit, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they're just, in their mind, they said, well, I got the 997 upgrade for the clutch and the flywheel or whatever it is, and kind of applied that to the bearing as
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the appeal of this car is it is probably, a modern IMS bearing away from being as close to a bulletproof 996 as you can get. And I think that's the appeal of this car, assuming the cosmetics and everything are
But do you know, is it, they put LN sleeves, they put different pistons. But did they use an aftermarket bearing, or did they use the OEM bearing?
It's hard to know, because in aftermarket bearing, even LNs, they have a mileage or time
limit on it.
I believe.
Yeah, but it's like 6 years or 50,000 miles, and as we all know.
But here's where I would go with this car.
kept
If whoever purchases this car, just plan on $2,500, right? Everything else is done,
Right.
And then just put the IMS solution if you're worried about it, and then you're done,
Right,
And the car is ready to go.
Ready to go for. I mean, you could buy the oil-fed IMS solution for $1,500, and then have a car that's probably going to outlive you.
Again, $34,000 for a beautiful Iris blue, super clean
All right,
car.
we like your pick, Vu.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, so
all right.
Manny, what'd you pick?
I picked the '04 Turbo Cab because there's no IMS discussion with this car. It uses the Mesker engine. Comes with the hardtop if you want to go with the. If you drive this car 4-season, which the later turbos are definitely 4-season cars, it's nice to have a hardtop so you don't have to expose your soft top.
Plus, it's a cool look.
Yeah, it's a whole different look.
Yeah.
People confuse it with the coupe, but it's...
You mean a hardtop on one of these?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks terrible.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, no.
It doesn't look
That's
as good.
that's why they're all hanging in people's garages and leaning up against
they're hanging because it sounds like a good idea when you get it.
And so you have to...
And then you find out you don't want to
car.
drive it in the winter and snow, and so you leave the... I know I have a Boxster hardtop sitting in the
so you
closet.
you all know my hoarding problem, right? So my
How many
neighbor,
hardtops are sitting in
so my neighbor goes, "Hey Vu, I'm clearing out this property, and the guy that left a Porsche hardtop." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Do you want it?" And of course, what I say, yes.
You're sitting on a hardtop?
I've got a dark blue 997 hardtop.
997 or 996?
They're the same, right?
They're the same.
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, 996, 997. It's the
I
same.
kind of wouldn't mind a hard. The problem is the mounting kit is like $1,000. I mean, you can go buy a used hardtop for $600, and then you got to spend $1,000 just for the mounting, the brackets or whatever.
So yeah, I have a hardtop. I don't have a 996 cab or 997 cab. But
Well,
maybe one day.
I like the... I like 996 turbos.
I definitely love them
the
too.
pricing was what made them very attractive.
Yeah.
How much is this one?
68.
68.
And
so
it's not a tip. It's a...
No, it's a 6-speed.
Oh,
Wow.
this is an X50 version too.
Yeah, it has the X50 on it.
And for those that don't know what X50 is, what does that add?
That's the power kit. So they had bigger turbos. I think
30
they do
some
some internal
like
engine
410
work.
or 415 to 450 or
It's
something.
415 stock,
Yeah.
so it takes it up to 450.
Yeah, which is significant.
That's a lot of horsepower for
That
a
is.
convertible.
Yeah.
Plus, it just sounds cool. It's got the X50 package.
And it's once again, it has the Mesker engine, so
Yeah.
you don't have to mess with that.
But let's face it, I owned a 996 Turbo, and these cars are not maintenance free. The one thing that you'll be dealing with is the fact that there's a lot of stuff that is just flat out not accessible in there. So that if you want to, for example, replace your coolant overflow tank, if it's yellowed and you're thinking it's due to crack,
Yeah.
the engine has to partially come out. So there's a whole host of other stuff, secondary air injection system that you'll want to replace when the engine's out. So it gets to be almost like Ferrari ownership from the standpoint of engine's got to come out to do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of, while we're in there, let's do this. And that's kind of a buzzkill when you're replacing stuff that isn't actually broken, that hasn't actually failed, and you're spending a lot of money to do it just because it's accessible. So, something to keep in mind.
This from an English car owner.
Yeah. I was about to
Have
say.
you seen how accessible everything is on that DVR? The whole friggin' front
Well, it
third of
has
the
to be.
car lifts up.
They were still working on it as they were rolling it into the showroom floor.
Right.
So
So, anyways,
a good
I
looking
got
car.
this because a friend of ours who I met through Cars and Coffee, he had been looking for a Porsche for I think maybe 9 months now, and I convinced him to buy the test drive membership because he said he didn't want to join a club, didn't want to be a poser until he had a Porsche, and I said, well, test drive is just up your alley because it's meant for people who don't have a Porsche but are looking for one and want access to the PCA classifieds, the Mart. It took him 1 week to find a car.
Oh, really?
All those months trying to bid on cars and auctions and losing,
Right.
calling up people and other classifieds and finding out the car's been sold. And I told him, I said, check every day on the Mart,
Right.
sometimes multiple
Refresh
times.
it every morning.
And he said it came out that morning. He called a guy up. He was in Texas. We're in Maryland. Made the offer, and he owned the car. Texted me a picture of he said, this is now off the Mart.
Right.
And it was a 05 Turbo S hardtop, which is the last year of the turbos, which has the X50 package already as part of the S.
Let me guess, was it seal gray?
I believe it was gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all seal
They're all
gray.
seal gray.
Yeah. Yeah, mine was seal gray with black. Ho hum.
Now, the one thing, if I were to pick this car up, and for some reason, I don't, it's very visible with the turbos, is I feel like they have Cadillac ride height. They all sit up way too high, and just a nicer suspension on these turbos just changed the whole look of the car.
Right.
They look amazing.
I know. That was a point that you constantly made about my car, and I don't disagree. That
The 4x4 look.
Yeah, that, and they're quiet, and there's no gundo hack for a turbo. I mean, you are paying the Porsche turbo tax on any aftermarket exhaust system that you buy, so there's that.
You don't need to hear it, you just need to feel it.
Right.
All that power.
It'd be nice to hear it and feel it, but okay.
What'd you pick?
What did I pick?
Yeah.
I picked the first year light metallic
Faux.
blue 944.
8344.
Yeah, which original owner, the other thing I like about it is how can you go wrong buying a Porsche from a guy whose name is
How can you go
Gerhard?
wrong? He says that all that time.
I know.
How can you go wrong?
The seller's name is Gerhard, and he's the original owner, and he's kept every receipt. I mean, you had me at Gerhard, but, this just has the look of a car that, that you want to own. I mean, it's got a couple of...
You mean the wheels that are beat up and...
They're, the rim, the unpainted part of the cookies has some corrosion. Big deal. That's easy to fix. Plus, you could buy...
Wheels aren't important, so it doesn't matter if they rust.
No,
That's
but
no
let's
indication
face it,
of anything else.
They are the least desired Porsche wheel on the planet. You could go anywhere and find a set of 4 refinished perfect cookie cutters for that car for under $1,000. So problem solved. The other issue with the car is it has the usual Grand Canyon of dash cracks that you see in all these cars.
Yeah.
And, that's a little bit off-putting, but it's had like sheepskin seat covers on it its whole life. The seats are perfect. Paint looks original. He's got every record for it, and it's a first-year car, so it's got manual steering. I happen to like the original, the yellow font gauges and the reverse sweep tack and all that stuff. I think that stuff is cool.
So that was your second pick. So that's a $13,000 944. What was your first pick?
Oh, my first pick was the car that I tried to buy was the $7,900 968 in San Diego that sold literally, to Manny's point earlier, there are great cars and occasionally good deals on the Mart, but you've got to be quick. And this car went in a nanosecond. It was 138,000 mile silver.
I remember the car. That was a good looking car.
Yeah, 968 coupe for $7,900.
Oh, that's a steal.
Oh, I know. We're talking about this 944 for $12,900. This is a 968 that was $8,000. I just hope it went to an end user. I don't want to see this thing.
I was reading
flipped.
your paragraph first, and I saw 8,000. I didn't realize this 944 was 12,944.
Yeah, you asked me between a $13,000 944 and an $8,000 968. You know which one I'm
Yeah,
gonna pick.
I know. But let's face it. I mean, that 968 was a freak.
So what's the Achilles heel for this car? And the reason why I ask is, so the family was with me at Porsche Parade, and if you look at my 16, now 17-year-old son's camera roll, he had all pictures of 944s, and he came up to me, he's like, "Dad, are these cars expensive? Because I really like this car."
We talked about this the last time. I judged at the Audrain Concours a couple of weeks ago, the under 30 year old owner class. It was 5 944s. So there's something about millennials and 944s. I don't know. I mean, the only Achilles heel for me with 944s is if you have to do a clutch, it's pricey. I think the torque tube and the exhaust and everything have to come down. And doing timing belt, balance shaft belts every 5 years or whatever is kind of a pain. But otherwise,
That doesn't sound hateful.
It all
pretty
depends on how the
straightforward.
cars were maintained.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this falls under a lot of cheap Porsches where people didn't want to maintain them properly. And
The
went
third
the,
and fourth owner syndrome.
Do these have real
I
heat,
have a hack
real
to
AC?
do this.
Do they have real heat or real AC? Like, could you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's not Toyota Camry AC.
Yeah.
But I had a black on black 87 924S, and it struggled.
Yeah.
And it was only a couple years old when I got it. So in the Baltimore heat, it struggled. But, it was...
you struggle in the ball. Everybody struggles in the Baltimore.
But you're not putting your hand over the vent going, I think cold air is coming.
Yeah.
It's better than a 911 old 911 air conditioning.
I love the way they look. I mean, they were in the era of me growing up and in all the movies and stuff, but it may be my physical proportions, but with your 944, 968, other cars I've sat in, I cannot find a comfortable driving position. I feel like I'm so close to the steering wheel. Like my legs don't reach, but then I'm too close. Like it's just not a comfortable seating position. But again, it might just be me.
Part of the problem with
at restaurants, you have no problem finding a seating position.
Yeah. Manny's looking at me. You should lay off the food. Maybe that's why.
Part of the problem with 944s, I think, is the diameter of the steering wheel, because in a lot of situations you have steering wheels that come into contact with your thighs and everything else. A smaller diameter wheel, I think, goes a long way to making the car easier to live with. But I mean, ergonomically, they're kind of weird, you know. I mean, the handbrake being outboard the seat, and
I like
all
that
stuff.
because that's like a Fiero. Brings me back to my Fiero days.
I owned one for several years, and I fit in it quite easily. But the one thing was the steering wheel doesn't telescope and it doesn't tilt. And as Rob said, if you have the original wheel, they're very big. They'll probably touch your thighs, and that's the main issue.
Oh, so maybe that's why I always feel like it just feels weird.
Yeah, you know, get a 300.
Down here.
Exactly.
Get a 330 millimeter.
See, Manny looking at me all funny. It's not me.
No, it's not you. And road testers back in the day noted the same thing. Just get a 330 millimeter wheel, and that problem is largely solved. I mean,
is that why most of those cars
get the wheel for Americans?
Most of those cars have Momo steering wheels in them,
and that's exactly why.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, when I bought it,
the driving position kind of reminds me a little bit of like a BRZ, you know, Toyota 86 kind of thing.
Sure.
You know, you sit low, and I don't know.
So Damon picked one of my favorite modern day cars.
It was a 2016 Cayman GTS. I picked a Cayman R for the last Mart Fresh, so I guess I'm on a roll here. But the reason I picked this one was because it's the flat six, naturally aspirated flat six powered Cayman. It's the last one before the 718s came around with the turbo flat fours.
Here we go again, the discussion of the exhaust.
Exactly. Well, it's not just that. It's and I love the flat fours, but if you're somebody who likes a flat six, instead of going for a 718 Spider or GTS 4.0 or Cayman GT4, which probably all over $100,000 at this point on the used or new market, you can go for this, $70,000. The guy has some competition seats in it. I'm guessing buckets, although I can't tell from the one picture that he included. But he has the stock seats with it, so you can do a little bit of track work if that's your thing, and get the flat six experience for a fraction of the cost of a new car.
So I read your description. It's got a replaced engine. That's curious.
Yes, it does. So that can be a good or a bad thing, in my opinion. I guess you'd want to figure out why the engine was replaced, what the replacement engine is, and who did the replacement. So
yeah, that's a big story. What year is this?
It's 2016. So you'd think it was replaced under warranty and probably by a Porsche dealer, but again, you'd want to figure that out.
You'd want to know that, and if it was, you know, that clears some of it up. But I mean, that's a major story on a 5-year-old car.
Yeah. 20,000 miles.
You know, on a 97 Boxster or a 01 996 or something like that, a replacement engine is not that big of a deal or that big of a story. But I mean, this is
it's a new car.
Definitely want to investigate. Yeah.
So let's talk about replacement engines. Like in my mind, when have you ever taken anything apart and put it back together and it's 100%? Like would you? I don't know. Like
I mean, if you're rebuilding an engine, that's to me 100%. I've had it done.
I mean, if you don't get 100% with an engine, it's probably gonna not run all that well.
No, I just feel like connectors.
But it's people that know what they're doing, though.
I think that's what's key, is right. Like that's what's key is like who did the engine replacement. And I'm not saying the dealer isn't capable, but it comes down to like the individual in the dealership too. Like if they cared and if they just cracked a connector or did they properly remove it. And
it's a lot easier now than it was 10, even 20 years ago to replace an engine. It's not as
it was designed into it, right?
Exactly. It's
okay. I can.
I can't even tell you how many times in a race car we took the engine out. We didn't take it apart. We only took it apart once to have it rebuilt. But
is that money shift, right?
That was a money shift, and that's when I bought a new engine, and then we got the
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up. You started
That was
shaking.
maintenance.
Maintenance. You said, honey, I need to take the engine out. That was maintenance. Oh, money shift.
Everyone misses a shift.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's more accepted in the Porsche world than it is in the Corvette and the muscle car world, where everybody's obsessed with matching numbers. Because, you had a run of 2.7 cars in the mid-'70s where engines failed prematurely, and those cars show up now with 3-liter or 3.2 conversions, and nobody bats an eyelash over that. You obviously had the run of M96 and M97 cars where the joke was, the check engine light was actually the replace engine light. So it's something we're kind of used to, but I agree with you guys. You want to know who did it.
Yeah, definitely do your research.
Yeah.
But, it could be a major plus to have a basically brand new engine in a car like that, as long as it was done properly.
And my '05 Boxster was, when I bought it from the original owner, he told me that in '06 the engine was replaced because of IMS. And it didn't affect my decision. In fact, it kind of made me happy that I had an engine with an updated bearing now in the car. But yeah, Lord knows the dealers did so many of them. I'm sure we talked to Peter Smith, our resident Goldmeister tech. He'll probably tell you how many engines he's replaced versus rebuilding an engine. Rebuilding an engine is a lot different than replacing an engine, just taking a block and putting it back, just, putting all the air conditioning alternator back on versus splitting a case and rebuilding it. It's a little bit more know-how.
Cool. So we've got some new stuff coming up with regards to Mart Fresh. You want to fill people in on that? I know it's a proposal, but it's something you were thinking of doing with Mart Fresh?
Oh, yeah. We were thinking about doing just kind of a Mart-based e-newsletter. Just a monthly thing that talks, because the Porsche market is historically bonkers right now. I've never seen it this frothy. I don't think any of us have. And now seems like the right time to do kind of a Mart-based e-newsletter, just to sort of give people some insight from experts like Nathan Mers on where values really are, what's going up, how quickly it's going up, that sort of thing. And also giving people the opportunity to get sort of push notices or regular updates when something new hits the Mart, because you kind of have to be quick right now, as that 968 showed. That car was on the West Coast, and we found it at 9 o'clock Eastern time, and by noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time, there was already a deposit on that car.
If you want a deal, you got to move fast.
Right.
I had to do that on my car. I was the first caller, and literally less than probably
First
an
call,
hour
cash in
after.
hand.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of people wanted my car, but I was the first guy to call. So
right, and we have no idea how long it's going to be this way, or if this is the new normal. But it just seems like now is the right time to launch a new e-newsletter that really kind of focuses on the Mart, and what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's. I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of build out from what we've done with eBrake News, and we've seen, and it's a perfect segue to our next discussion of the recent Tech Tactics Live, which was the 2021 market review.
Right.
Our members love being in the know of what's going on.
That's got 15,000 views already, and that's going to be one of the pieces of content that goes out with this, along with the lead story, which we all talked about the other day, which was $100,000 Porsches that aren't $100,000 yet, and we'll give you sort of a sneak preview of that. It's 987 Boxster Spider, 987 Cayman R, and 968 Club Sport, all cars that are still selling for under six figures, but probably not for long.
Yeah, a buddy of mine just picked up a first-gen Spider, and he was asking me, what do you think? Should I buy it for $52,000? And it was I think it was like a 40,000-mile car, black, sports seats, sport chrono, clean
TDK
car,
manual. And he paid what for it?
$52,000. I said, dude, if you
He's
don't,
like 20 to the good
I was
already.
like, if you don't buy that, I will buy that. And I said that without even talking to my wife yet. So I almost, thankfully,
you just bought it out from under him.
that's a terrible price, but I'll buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
way too ethical.
Yeah, so it's cool also to see. We did the same show in November of 2020, and to look back and watch that video and to where we are today and how the market's been, man, we look pretty good.
But if you watch other YouTube videos, how many people predicted the market would crash in 2021?
Yeah, true.
Of course, it went the other direction.
I predicted when the pandemic started, the market was going to was going to go down like it did in 2008, 2009 in the Great Recession, and the opposite happened, and nobody was really predicting.
Well, I think
that.
as PCA as a whole, PCA leadership, I'm sure they probably thought that membership would go down.
Well, we definitely
with the pandemic.
tightened our belts, and we set up our budget accordingly, and yet we grew.
Yeah. So it's amazing that the bubble that was supposed to burst just got bigger.
Yeah.
And people constantly ask me, "Are we going to go back to the land of $15,000 SCs?" So I don't think so.
In a couple of years on, it doesn't feel like a bubble anymore.
No, I mean,
It really doesn't.
there are peaks and troughs in any market, but the fact of the matter is the new floor is never going to be what the old floor was. So,
I agree with that.
a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, there were still $29,000 kind of tatty but perfectly drivable SCs around. If there's an adjustment, you will not see $29,000 SCs again. You might see them in the mid or high 30s again, but
You might
ship
see
has
it
sailed.
level off, but I think what has really fueled the market as well is the lack of cars, just lack of cars in general. So now if I'm not buying a $60,000 SUV, or I'm not buying this, that, or the other, then I have more money, so to speak, to play with these cars and thinking that it might be a good investment, and it just kind of compounds, and people get in this mindset. You see, we were talking about this Nissan Murano convertible that went for 60 grand. Like what? How is? I would have bet my
Because it's
house
rare.
that was never going to happen. How does that happen?
Without a bidder's bar on an online auction, I have absolutely no. I mean, because that sort of thing, when it happens at Barrett Jackson, it's 2 or 3 drunk dudes, but
Right.
online, I have no idea.
Maybe they're drinking at home.
Well, in the Murano Cabriolet's Murano convertible, there are probably 5 people who own it and 6 people who want one, right? So that one guy is going to pay whatever he can.
It's the guy who missed the Isuzu V-Cross the week before.
The Nissan Murano museum maybe needed that car.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at this right here on the auction website. Lincoln Mark V.
Oh, I love that car.
That is cool.
I love that car. In fact,
Current bid $25 grand.
because look how
I
clean it
just
is.
want to drive that thing
Now,
around with like an
5 years ago,
5 years ago, I loved that car.
5 years ago, you would not have paid $25,000.
I would not have paid 25.
I've always laughed
I
at
wanna
those
try
cars.
Can I
that
tell a
really
little
around.
story? Can I tell a little story about that car?
with an Isaac Hayes.
I don't think this car
eight-track.
would fit in my garage. It looks like it's longer than 20 feet.
So you know why I love that car? Just aside from like the design and how big it is at 79, is think of it back in the day.
It's got like a 460
I got a-
cubic inch V8. That
I got
makes
a good
150
grade.
horsepower.
I got a good grade in class on one of the tests, and myself and a classmate won the opportunity to go to McDonald's with the teacher, and that's what she drove. So literally, we left school grounds, hopped into her '79 Lincoln 2-door. I thought it was like the sweetest car ever, and she drove us to McDonald's and back. And I don't think I got a parent permission slip. We just did it.
Wow. Weren't those the cars too that had like the designer edition, like the Bill
the
Blass, and Givenchy?
tufted
Yeah.
leather interior with the buttons. Oh man, I thought, whew.
Oh well, I mean, I just saw you geek out over like an '85 Eldorado.
Oh,
a
at
week
Throttle
ago,
Stop?
So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. No, I perfectly
There's a side to Voo that
70s and 80s cars that are perfectly preserved. I just love that. Like I would love. We were talking about this earlier. A Buick Roadmaster Estate with a bubble roof, 3rd row seat, wood grain. Like if there was a nicely mint one, I would totally rock that.
a lot of people want those though. Because did you see
But
the
I
Cadillac?
wanted that before those people did. I
know.
wanted it for a while.
Fair enough. Did you see the Fleetwood that was at Throttle Stop?
Yes,
That
I did.
same platform?
I did.
Like this one here. So this is we're looking at an 8,000 mile 97 Boxster. Now,
How
3,
much is that
4
going
years
for?
ago, these could be had all day.
$8 grand.
At $8 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's it's at 18 current bid with.
There's
Like,
only 8,000 miles on it. And it still has 3 hours ago. So
but that is like the launch. We're looking
But
at.
you look at this
Launch
and
colors with 8,000
Yeah.
miles. I mean, that was never a cheap car.
Yeah,
no, it was under $10,000.
No, not
Sure,
for an
under
8,000. Not for an
10.
8,000.
Not for an 8,000 mile
We're very
Yeah.
close to it because I was looking at these cars because I love the 97 and 99s. They're
Right.
first gen of Boxster. Very simple. It's what I think is a true analog car.
Yeah.
And I like low horsepower cars. They're more fun to drive to me than the higher horsepower You rarely get flat out type of
And
cars.
that's the car very similar to the car in our latest YouTube video with Grant Larson.
It is
And almost exactly, right? And when he talked about, again, people, I drives me bonkers. And I've had a 996 for a long time. I have a Boxster, and I love the headlights. And people that give me crap about headlights.
Who gives? Does anybody
if you watch
give
that
you crap about the headlights?
If you watch that video and Grant tells you the design of that headlight, you're just like,
makes a bit of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
There is
makes a lot of
nothing
sense.
inherently wrong with the headlight
No,
design.
they're just a bunch of haters.
Right. I mean, nobody hated him on the GT1.
Exactly.
Because that came with like 450 horsepower.
Right. That's true. But honestly, have you seen anybody under 50 hate on the headlights of a Boxster?
No, in fact, like my cousins that are fairly young, to them, like the headlights is not even a thing. Like they don't understand. If I say, so you like it with the headlights, they're like, why wouldn't I? Like they just know it as a 911 or they know it as a Boxster and they just like it as it is.
Right. Yeah, that's just kind of a tired trope that needs to be put to rest at this point.
But that video, since you mentioned it, it's out on, just released on Wednesday, I think, or Tuesday.
Yep.
That is I love Porsche parades because of the access we have to a lot of Porsche celebrities or engineers. A lot of times a Porsche family who couldn't make it this year because of COVID. But to think that the designer of the Boxster, or at least the lead designer, there's several, was easily accessed at parade.
Oh yeah.
I know I sat in on his presentation, which unfortunately we couldn't record for the rest of the membership to see because he hadn't gotten full permission from Porsche to show a lot of these Polaroids, which he explained that they couldn't take 35 millimeter cameras into the facility in Wysock, but they were allowed to use this Polaroid they kept there. So when the project was done, he turned all the Polaroid pictures into the archives, and they would take Polaroid pictures to keep track of their progress and chronicle the evolution. But the Boxster was actually a shorter car than we know it now, and they stuck it in the wind tunnel, and engineers told them you have to make it longer. It needs more downforce to keep the rear end down. So they had to chop off the clay's already hard, it's already made. So how do they chop off this? Well, they recruit the landscaper for Wysock. This guy does nothing but maintain the trees and the bushes.
Now he's a Wysock designer.
So he's in there in the design room with this big chainsaw cutting off, and the Polaroid shows him cutting the back end off with this chainsaw because that's the only way they could figure out how to cut it off so they could elongate it.
Yeah.
I thought, this is all the stuff I read about the Boxster. I'd never read this part, but having Grant explain it. And this is sort of what the video also talks about.
The video doesn't go so deep into the sensitive areas that Grant might have touched base on in that seminar, but you'll probably learn something new about the Boxster's design, how the headlights came to be what they are now, how the side intakes were imagined one way and then became another, after budget constraints. Because you got to remember, back then Porsche was just starting to dig itself out of a huge financial hole. So there wasn't a lot of money to play around with.
And they had to launch two cars.
What's the one element that Grant got his way on that to this day he's still really proud of?
He loves the rear of the car. He was very proud of that.
What about the rear of the car?
Just the shape and how it looks a lot like the Spider.
And the center exhaust.
And the center exhaust was a big thing.
But let's face it, Grant's a delightful person. He's incredibly accessible. Just nice guy from Wisconsin. I mean, super, super nice,
super accessible
guy.
And that's the thing is, I encourage folks, if there's an event, a PCA event, where you're having special guests like Grant Larson, to go listen to him in person, because we're not videoing. I remember when we had Frank Volliser at a PCA event, the things that you get to hear firsthand from them, and they love sharing it, because just imagine, like, they have all these, I wouldn't say secrets, but they have all these wonderful stories that they can't really tell in public unless they know people are not recording, right? And so we tell people, put their phones down, we don't record anything, and you just get so much more involved in sort of their projects and the behind the scenes. It's pretty awesome, and it's hard to explain unless you've actually sat there with someone like that and you hear stories like this.
Yeah, it's even if you're not a Boxster fan, it's so interesting to hear the designer do a walk around 25 years later, and this car still is very more popular than it was when it came out, and now part of Porsche history and lore. But that presentation to me was like the highlight of parade of all the new things. And Lord knows I've studied Porsche history for a long time, but hearing it from the designer himself, what it was like to be in that room, how they prepared the car for the Detroit Auto Show, how they were rushed, and how they decided that this car was going to be built not based on the reaction from Detroit. He said that they would have had Detroit not gone over well when they debuted the car, it might have made them rethink it. But by then they were committed. They were going to build this car. Detroit was just like a confirmation that, yeah, this is something that we know is going to be big.
Yeah. You know who I want to talk to, and I love Grant and Thorsten back there, and a number of folks that we have back at Stuttgart and Weissach that we talk to. But one person that I haven't had an opportunity to meet.
Pinky Lie?
Pinky Lie with
Pinky
the 996. And
He's got in California, right?
Yeah, he's in California
Yeah.
too. Like, why aren't we like accessing him? Because I'm sure he's got some amazing stories.
He was behind the 996.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, he's definitely a person that I'd love to.
We need to find some time
Yeah.
with him somehow. Well, we're going to be in Palm Springs for a parade next year. Wonder if we can get him to do a presentation. Ooh, that'd be
That
cool.
would be fun. Because, he's a complete, unlike, Grant and Tony Hatter and people like that who are still obviously very much connected with the company. Pinky Lie, obviously, at some point parted ways with Porsche and has been pretty quiet about Porsche since then. And he's largely a mystery to all of us sitting here. So
Why is that? That's what I don't
know.
understand. Why is that?
Probably because, like Rob said, he's not connected to the factory anymore, and the factory parades Grant and Tony out as their de facto designers. Although there's a lot more designers for Porsche, they're like the face of the designers, and they're great representatives, ambassadors of the brand. But yes, I would love to talk to Pinky to hear the stories of how they developed the 996, because that was a radical departure. Grant joked when he said, when he told his friends that he got a job with Porsche, they all looked down like they felt sorry for him, because up until then, there was no changes at Porsche for design. There was nothing new. It was the same car they were coming out with every year, almost like the Volkswagen Beetle.
Right.
You had the most minor
it was a
changes.
much smaller company, right? He came from Audi, right? He was at Audi
think
at the
so,
time?
yeah.
Yeah, he was at Audi,
Yeah.
and he was switching to a smaller company that may look like it wasn't doing financially well.
Right.
And designs haven't changed, but kudos to Grant to take the leap of faith.
I know. To Manny's point, you imagine taking a job and saying, yeah, you can touch everything but the roof, the glass, the doors, and the fenders. That's pretty much.
But we love how you can design cars.
Yeah, you might be the person who gets to design the next bumper, or the next turn signal lens.
Well, and then you add in the regulations. Like people, I'm sure designers have amazingly beautiful sketches and designs of different things, but then the real world kind of kicks them in the gut, because now you have bumper height regulations, opening regulations, and the reason why there's the rubber around the whale tail of a G-body car is because of regulations, because
People may run into it.
Yeah, people might run into it, and they didn't want a hard surface. It had to be a big rubber block.
But I think one of the best stories we heard was, I think it was Dr. Walliser told us that the reason that there's big, radiator openings, but there's, the intake slats, I guess you would call them. The turbos have them on the side, the Boxster has them. And the reason they're not a complete, hole with no slats is because of the baby head rule.
Baby head rule.
That you have to, if a baby's head can fit in it, then it's too big. And I remember the Dr. Walliser saying back in Weissach, they distract your head and like, does America have a problem with babies in the highway? What's the purpose?
Regulations, my
friend. He even showed us this drawing of the 918 Spider, as a joke they did internally, with 3 toddlers in the front trunk. And they called it the 5-seater 918 because evidently they were so intrigued by the fact that this regulation of a baby's head is how they determine whether or not they're going to put slats in an opening.
See, I want to see the Polaroids of people testing that with the baby doll, seeing if it's going to fit in the side intake.
So they were equally perplexed about the, North American cars, I guess, maybe not just American cars, but all North America, they have to have the glow-in-the-dark release in the trunk. So, if you get trapped in there or something, you can open it up. And
the one the mob puts you in the trunk and get out.
And they were very confused to how many people in America are putting kids in the trunks to transport them.
That's literally what it is. It's like the mobster rule or something. You're like Jimmy the Weasel and you're in the trunk. It's like, wait 30 minutes.
But it happened to somebody and they got it through regulation.
I don't think the mob is all that susceptible to regulation. It's like saying wait 30 minutes before being thrown into the East River.
They're going to choose their car. Oh, we can't buy that Lincoln because it has a pull exit.
So I would love to have been in those engineering meetings when they say, okay, for this year you have to design an interior release of the trunk because in case someone gets stuck inside the trunk.
But they did.
All right.
Yep, so that's why I'm North America, because I think European cars don't have that feature. That's usually how you can tell a North American car if it has the interior trunk release.
So let's switch to an announcement. I want to let everyone know that the fall 2021 member-only raffle is now open for your chance to win a 2022 992, a 911 Carrera. And hopefully, if all goes well, we usually start with one car, but depending on how many entries are sold, we usually raffle off up to 6 cars.
Is it a base one or an S?
So this one's a base one.
Okay.
But if you look at the specs on a base 992 now, there's nothing base about it. It's a quick car, tons of power, beautiful handling. But yeah, I thought we'd announce it, but then share with people what's it like once you've won the car, because I go through this with every winner so they can understand their options. Nobody ever thinks that they're going to win. They buy an entry hoping to win, and then once they win, their mind is just blown about the opportunities of winning one of these cars. And unlike what most people think, these cars are not sitting on the back lot at PCA, and then when you win, we just drop it off on your driveway. We actually do better than that. We have a spec, we have a build, we have a commitment with Porsche on a car that we're raffling off, or a number of cars. And when you win the car, I actually send to you the build sheet. And we don't build it, base. We build it because if you don't take the car and you take the cash alternative, it's a car that can actually go to a dealership. So they're typically spec'd pretty well. Most common question is, they're like, do I have to take the color of the car that's in the ad for the raffle? And the answer is no. You can choose any basic color or standard color. And in fact, if you want something different, another standard color, you can do that. You can change that up. If you want to, quote unquote, upgrade to a different color, you can do that too. You're just responsible for the price difference.
And so how many do we sell for the first one tickets?
$8,500 for the first grand prize, which is the car, plus $25,000, or you can take an $85,000 cash prize.
And then how many after that for the second car?
I think it's like $4,500 or so.
A little bit less.
A little bit less, yeah. So we build it so that the first one, definitely the program, if we were to just do one car, like, the program is built so that would be just fine for the club. This is a fundraiser for the club. But as you know, Manny, because you were around when we did our first one, we initially sold out. Our first raffle, we sold out, and we did as we promised. After we sold out, we sent tickets back to people, and people were so upset that we sent tickets.
A lot of hate mail.
Yeah, they're like, "Why are you sending me my ticket back?" Well, because we sold out. They're like, "Well, why don't you just keep it and figure out how you can put me in the raffle for the next car?" And that's why we have it, as a raffle that can grow based on the number of tickets that are, or number of entries that are sold.
I know Damon obviously comes because he always videotapes. Have you been to one, Rob, yet?
I haven't yet. No.
Yeah, it's really cool in the sense that people always ask us. They'll say, "No one looks surprised," and everyone, if I won, I would be screaming up and down. And I would tell them, I go, "You're shocked." People, you're watching people literally being just in shock and awe.
Life-changing moment.
Because like Vu said, when you buy, when I buy Mega Million tickets, you're spending $5 a dream, but deep inside you're not going to win this.
Right.
Maybe you'll win $2 and get some of your money back, but that's about it. You're not going to win $250 million. So when someone calls you up or knocks you on the door and says, or the prize patrol saying, you just won this,
Yeah.
I think only one person I remember that went nuts.
Very
There have
few.
been 2 or 3 since I've
Yeah, very few. And like you said, people are so shocked. And it's hard to capture. Of course, Damon does his best to capture the moment, but it's hard to capture people in shock. It just looks like they're
In
not.
shock.
Or not
They
that
just don't-
impressed.
they're
or,
just not impressed.
Like,
or
catatonic just
but-
doesn't make for exciting video.
Yeah, and
Well,
but
what
if
are
you
the
look at them
odds?
closely, they're shaking, and they're the one winner in Maryland where it was cold out. He was no shoes and a jacket, and he's standing out in the cold, and his wife brings him a jacket. He throws it on, and he's so nervous that he can't even zip up the jacket. Like, you can't really capture that. It's hard to capture that.
Right. But I mean, in terms of raffles with a prize that you actually want to win, this has got to be like top
Oh my gosh.
20 in terms of odds being in your favor.
The
right?
odds are amazing. The
Yeah.
fact that you can build the car that you really want. I wish I could play it. None
and
of us here.
technically, you
none
can
of-
win more than one car.
Oh my gosh!
If we're
yeah.
giving away like
that happen?
5, it came close.
Came close.
We had a grand prize, which was the cars, and then we had a second tier prize, which was a trip to Germany.
Trip to Germany.
And we had a guy who,
He bought 21 tickets.
yeah,
But the odds
he
are-
forgot
I mean-
that he thought he only bought 2. He said,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we reminded him he bought 21.
Yeah, his favorite number was 21, but still the odds of getting
That's bizarre.
Yeah,
I mean, the
it's-
same
yeah.
person wins a major prize.
He
you're
won the
starting
trip
look
to
like
Germany.
McDonald's with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Monopoly thing.
Exactly.
Plus
So
a car, and I asked Phil, I said, what would have happened if he would have won 2 cars? And he's like, we would have been giving away
2 cars.
2 cars.
Statistically, that is almost impossible to happen.
Right.
But he won the trip
And
as
the,
well.
and the cars that you see in the video, like we said, they're not the cars you're going to win. They're usually we stop at a dealer,
Yeah.
and we borrow a car. This year we had to get an older GT4, I think,
because they weren't available.
because
yeah.
the dealer just had none. But usually we try to get usually the dealer has an example, and we'll give credit to whichever dealer we go to rent a car for the day. And I just remember the one in Durham, North Carolina, because this guy was hugging me, and he was so happy that he won the trip to Germany.
Right.
And I thought, wow, when we tell him he also won,
Yeah, because we
the car.
revealed it.
That's
We
amazing.
revealed the trip first.
we had planned to just tell him he won the trip to
good news
Germany.
too, about this raffle is that, the dirty little secret of people who generally win cars and game shows and other things is they've got to sell the car because they can't pay the taxes, because you've got to pay income tax and you've got to pay, whatever tax.
The raffle tax.
Yeah, registration. But this is different.
Yeah, so when we started the raffle, I think it was like 2007 or so. It was just the car. It had no money attached with
Right.
it as a winner, and we did that for a few years. And I would say it was the majority of people ended up taking the cash because you're talking about $100,000 car. If you were to take delivery of the car, you're $30,000. Towards taxes and such that you weren't really planning to spend $35,000. So as much as people, they would say, oh, I'm taking the car. Then we go to do the paperwork. They're like, ooh, I didn't have
I'm not
30.
taking the car.
I'm not taking the car.
Yeah.
So, credit to the executive council back then. They said, well, and Porsche, they're like, what can we do to give people really the opportunity to win a car? And that's why we added the $25,000 cash. Does it cover all the taxes? No. But now, instead of coming up with $35,000 to take delivery of your car, some people have come away with as little as $5,000 and they took delivery of a car. Like they optioned down a little bit. And so it's, if you want a car, you win, you definitely can now.
To me, that's the coolest thing about the raffle is the fact that there is the cash component.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like getting a big coupon.
Oh, yeah.
When you buy a Porsche, and like Boo said, you can option out the rest. So, for anyone who's looking for a Porsche, or is a Porsche enthusiast, it's like a dream to
Absolutely.
because as we know, Porsche and Porsche Exclusive will be happy to separate you from your funds to get everything and anything you want
It's
leather
a
covered.
remarkably diplomatic thing.
And the other thing is, thanks to Porsche Cars North America, at least once a year, we have access to cars that are hard to get, right? Like we had the GT4, we had Targas that had just come out. I can tell you now, I know the car that we are going to raffle next year is a car that you cannot get. So, it's
GT4 RS.
Hush. I'm not going to give it up, but
I'm guessing this is guessing.
yeah, but that's cool too. Is not only do you get to win a car, you win a car that isn't on the showroom floor. You get to build it out yourself and so on and so forth. Yeah. So,
Well,
anyways,
$50
raffle ticket is all it takes. In fact, one of our winners from 2020 sent me a photo of his license plate that he had ordered a while ago, but because of COVID, it didn't come in. It says 1 raffle ticket.
Yeah, it's only open to
PCA members.
current PCA members, so it's not something to the public. If you're listening from across the pond or whatnot, it's not available to everyone. Just to a member benefit. Only PCA members are able to buy tickets.
Yeah, in the U.S. and Canada.
Yes,
U.S. and Canada.
Yep.
All right, so last part of our podcast, we always like to get an update. Damon's Corner with his Cayman. You did an autocross, but it seems like it's the season's pretty much done for you. I noticed you have a missing BBS wheel cap. So what else are you going to fix over the winter?
Yeah. Well, I need to get some new wheel caps, or at least a spare set that fell off when I was driving, not at the autocross.
Oh, really?
Funny enough,
Really?
It was just driving around on the street. Must have hit a bump or a pothole. So, but yeah, I haven't done anything to the car recently, but I have a lot of plans this winter. It'll be on a quick jack for probably a good month or two, and I'll be working on
quick check. I mean,
Quick jack, slow process.
Yes, quick jack, slow process. I'll be putting in a lightweight flywheel, a new clutch, and a sprung clutch, I should say, to go with the lightweight flywheel.
Does it need a clutch?
It doesn't need one, but before I take the car on track, I'm trying to do a bunch of things that'll make it reliable. So I've done a 2-quart deep
What's wrong
sub.
with the clutch that's in it?
It's fine, but there's still a grease seal on the IMS bearing. So to get the IMS
Yeah,
bearing
I would
with the
do
grease
that.
seal.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
I'll
I'm
give you
doing
that.
everything I can to make the car not blow up on track when I take it there.
Okay.
So while I'm in there
That's
taking the IMS bearing grease seal out, I'll be doing the rear main seal, which is not leaking, but while I'm in there. And then while I'm in there is also the lightweight flywheel and a new clutch.
We should probably talk about the grease seal thing for a second, because obviously it's the last style of IMS bearing, the one that is not serviceable. You can't replace it without tearing the engine apart.
Right.
So the thing to do is you remove the grease seal so the bearing gets basically bathed in oil. Is that kind of
Yeah. So some people say don't remove the grease seal. Others say do remove it. I'm removing it because the people who've told me to remove it, I respect their opinion very much. What happens is that IMS bearing is too big to come out of the engine to be replaced unless you split the block when you're rebuilding the engine. So the next best thing is to remove the grease seal and allow the engine oil to splash onto it and lubricate it.
too big to service, but unfortunately not too big to fail.
Exactly. And don't pull the grease seal on an earlier car that has a smaller bearing. Just replace the bearing.
Right.
This is only for the M97 engine.
That you can't pull out
exactly. So I'll be doing that. And I've already got the 2-quart deep sump done. I'll be doing a water pump and an expansion tank when I'm in there, and a low temp thermostat. So my cooling issues should be solved before I get on track.
Have you had cooling issues?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Clutch works fine, no cooling issues, but I'm going to change it all.
This is like my 996 turbo experience. We're gonna change a bunch of shit that's not broken. Spend a lot of money doing it.
No, but
well, the thing is, you go on track,
going
you
on
have
track.
sticky tires, and you starve your engine of oil.
You're doing the right thing.
You only have to do that
We're
once.
just teasing you.
So,
You're definitely doing the right
Just
thing.
don't be the numbnut that wrecks on turn one on the first lap of the first session of the season.
I'll try not to.
Just don't remember it's a long driver's ed season, so
There's no trophies.
I'd be very
There's
sad.
no trophies. Yeah.
there's no driver's ed championship.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just making the car good for the track. Cayman R / Cayman S brake calipers. I bought a used set of Giro disc rotors, so two-piece brake discs, which are bigger than the Cayman R stock rotors and also a bit lighter. Semi-solid transmission mounts and stainless steel braided brake lines. So it's basically going to be...
This is going away from a...
No kidding. I mean, Damon's Cayman is going to be a regular segment of this podcast because this is
turning into a track monster.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's getting there. So,
all right.
So
we'll keep notes and keep giving us great content on your build. And I know people are enjoying it. The last one that you did, what was that on the suspension install?
Yep, DIY suspension. It's on our YouTube channel. So if you have a 987 Boxster or Cayman or even a 986, you can use that video as a reference.
I feel like, though, as an intervention to warn you that it's probably cheaper at this point to go get hooked on crack than the amount of money you're about to spend in the next few years. And once you first step foot on the track, because it's never your fault. It's always the car's fault why you're not fast.
Right, but it's always good to live vicariously this way. Whenever somebody else is spending a crap ton of money, it's like I'll listen to him all day long because it's not my money.
So all I heard Rob say was, buy Hoosier and lots of them.
All right, folks. Well, that's the end of our third podcast. Again, thanks to 5 North Main Podcast Studio in Bel Air. Thank you to the Coffee Bar, and thank you guys for being here today. And we'll catch you at the next one.
And any comments or suggestions or criticism of what Rob said, sending to podcast at pca.org.
Podcast at pca.org. And remember, complaints go to Rob. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.